Fatima never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve sniffing dried flowers with strangers. 48. She'd traded Damascus market strolls for cramped apartments and job rejections, stress coiled tight in her shoulders. Yet here she stood, clutching a chipped teacup, a stress relief tea tasting, roped in by a grinning neighbor who swore chamomile cured migraines and loneliness. Petals floated like tiny suns in steaming water. Odd, sure, but as warmth seeped into her palms, so did a reckless thought. Maybe bold moves didn't. Fatima never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve spilling chamomile tea down her blouse while navigating a cobblestone street in clunky sandals. 48. She'd pictured elegance, market strolls with woven baskets, not fumbling like a newborn giraffe. But Paris had a way of humbling even proudest souls. Her deepest fear wasn't loneliness, it was becoming invisible, dissolving into city's hum like sugar in lukewarm tea. Back home, that chipped blue teacup had held her mother's laughter during monsoons. Here, it sat unused, a relic of a life folded too neatly into suitcases. Then came tea-tasting meetup flyer, fluttering onto her path like a dare. She hesitated. What if her accent tangled? What if no one came? But chamomile had always soothed storms. Stepping into that sunlit cafe felt like pressing play on a paused life. Strangers became fam over shared sips, their stories steeping together like loose leaves in hot water. By third cup, her shoulders unclenched. Maybe belonging wasn't about flawless steps, but learning to dance with your own clumsy rhythm. Paris hadn't asked her to shrink, it had waited for her to bloom, one fragrant sip a time. Woman never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve spilling chamomile tea down her blouse while fumbling with a metro map. 48 years young, she'd braved crowded markets, mispronounced pain au chocolate, even mastered art of side-eyeing pushy tourists, yet serenity remained elusive. Then one damp afternoon, a handwritten sign outside a tucked-away salon de the caught her eye, degustation de tisanes, stress, adieu. Inside, steam curled from mismatched cups as a silver-haired woman named Claudine demonstrated how swirling petals released their magic. Not just a drink, ma chérie, she murmured, pressing a warm cup into Fatima's hands. A pause button. Floral scent unlocked memories of her grandmother's kitchen, a thread of comfort stretching across continents. Claudine's weekly meetups became Fatima's anchor. Between sips, she learned to read tea leaves, predicting rain, not romance, swapped migration stories with a Senegalese seamstress, even hosted a disastrous but hilarious blindfolded tasting where someone mistook peppermint for parsley. Each blunder felt lighter shared over steam. One evening, Claudine slid a chipped cup toward her, one she had admired for its resilience, cracks gilded with gold. Kintsugi, Claudine winked. Like us. Stronger where we've had to mend. Months later, Fatima led her own circle in that same cozy space, pouring courage into porcelain. Regulars now teased her about boss-level steeping skills, but her real triumph was quieter, no longer measuring belonging in grams of fluency. Paris hadn't softened, but her hands around cup had. Market strolls took on new rhythm. She'd pause flower stalls, inhaling chamomile bouquets like promises. Some days, stress still nipped her heels. But now she knew antidote, a kettle's whistle, petals unfurling, and certainty that every steep was a fresh start. She never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve spilling scalding chamomile tea down her blouse while fumbling with a metro map. 48 years young and stubborn as a mule, she refused to let shaky hands or snickering teenagers derail her mission. This wasn't just about tea, it was about proving to herself that starting over didn't mean crumbling into a cliché of helpless newcomer. Her salvation came in unexpected places. A hole-in-wall tea shop near Marquet d'Aliger became her sanctuary, where steam curled from porcelain cups like whispered encouragement. Owner Madame Lefebvre, a woman who wore her wrinkles like medals, taught her to taste beyond bitterness. Stress lives in shoulders, she'd muse, watching Fatima's death grip on her cup. But chamomile? That's a rebel. Fights back quiet like. Fueled by equal parts curiosity and spite, woman organized a tea-tasting meetup her cramped studio. Flyers slapped onto lampposts with flower paste promised no French fluency required, just a working tongue. When only 3 women showed up, a Tunisian grandmother, a Ukrainian pianist, and a Parisienne with a penchant for neon scarves, she almost called it quits. But then pianist confessed she'd been surviving on instant coffee since fleeing Kiev, and scarf-clad local admitted she'd never actually tasted her tea, just gulped it between emails. Laughter bubbled up, thick as honey in mint tea. Market strolls became her reconnaissance missions. She'd haggle over bruised peaches with vigor of a general, then gift them to Lefebvre in exchange for tasting notes scribbled on receipt paper. That chipped teacup, rescued from a flea market bin, became her battle standard. Each sip was a middle finger to doubt, a reminder that roots could regrow in cracked pavement. By summer's end, her meetups had outgrown studio. Strangers brought cousins, co-workers, even a skeptical butcher who left swearing by lavender-infused blends. Fatima still got lost on metro, still mixed up biscuit and bicyclette. But now when stress clawed her ribs, she'd clutch that teacup and smirk. Paris hadn't softened, she'd just learned to steep herself in resilience. Fatima never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve spilling chamomile tea down her blouse while fumbling with a selfie stick. Yet there she stood, 48 and slightly sticky, grinning like a woman who just discovered gravity worked in her favor. Market strolls had become her solace, until today. Between fragrant spice stalls and crusty baguettes, she'd spotted a flyer for a tea-tasting meetup. Chamomile for stress relief, it promised. Her hands shook just holding it. Back home, her fam would have laughed. Tea won't fix your life, Habibti. But Paris had a way of nudging her toward tiny rebellions. She arrived early, clutching a chipped teacup from her childhood, one surviving relic from a suitcase of memories. Host, a polished woman with a skeptic's arched brow, eyed Fatima's mismatched saucer. Amateur, that look said. Fatima's pulse raced. Then, gutsy move, she set her cup right beside host's pristine porcelain. Let them stare. Steam curled as she poured. First sip, warmth unspooled like a secret. Second sip, shoulders dropped. By third, she forgot to count flaws. Across room, cameras flashed. Some influencer, probably. Fatima barely noticed until her phone buzzed hours later. A tagged photo, her, mid-laugh, teacup raised like a trophy, had gone viral. Life's worth capturing, read caption. Comments exploded, who's this queen? That teacup's a mood. Even host slid into her DMs, teach me your blend? Turns out, courage brews strongest in small cups. And spilling tea? Just proof you're drinking it. Fatima never imagined her first Parisian adventure would involve a dented teapot and a homesick heart. Yet here she was, 48 and fierce, turning chamomile into courage one steep a time. Market strolls became her therapy, sniffing lavender, haggling over bruised peaches, pocketing stray petals like love notes from city. Then came tea-tasting meetup. A whim, really. She dragged her chipped teacup, same one she'd carried from Damascus, to a cramped arrondissement cafe, expecting polite sips. Instead, she found fam, migrant grandmas, exhausted students, a jazz pianist with shaky hands, all clinging to steam like lifelines. Fatima guided them through rituals, inhale deep, pinkies out, quirky, but it stuck, let warmth unspool day's knots. Laughter bubbled louder than kettle. Weeks rolled by. Her cup, once a solitary comfort, now sat center table gatherings, ringed by sticky spoons and shared stories. Even Marie from Boulanggerie dropped in, claiming she hated herbal nonsense, yet somehow always left lighter. Fatima's odd habit? Tossing in a lone cardamom pod, for audacity, she'd wink. Paris never softened, but her shoulders did. Strangers became neighbors, then conspirators in joy. That's thing about chamomile, it doesn't erase storms, just reminds you how to dance in rain. So, boil your water, brave soul. Steep rebellion. Sip slow. World needs your kind of magic.